Good morning. You're listening to Drinking Socially, the official Untappd podcast.
Your weekly look into what's happening in the Untappd community and the world of beer.
This episode is brought to you by Untappd and the Untappd merchandise store. Use the coupon code PODCAST to get 20% off of your next purchase, no matter how large or small, no matter how many billionth check-in, no matter how many billionth check-in glasses or shirts or stickers you like to purchase, if they're still even available. Use the coupon code podcast and you'll get 20% off of your next purchase. And make sure, if you're listening to this, remember, if you haven't yet, hit the bell, subscribe, give us a like. Those things mean so much to Harrison that he names all of his children after those bells.
That's right. Bell 1 and Bell 2 and Big Bell, Little Bell. It's real confusing around dinner time here. All right. Especially at noon on a Sunday. All right. Anyway, enough church bell jokes. No costumes this week, although I think I could have killed it with my hat based on today's episode. But I flew right by it because we're going on another virtual trip, folks. This time to the farm. That's right. We're going to be covering the Trip to the Farm badge today. And we're doing it in a pretty cool and unique way. Collab alert! Collab alert! That's it. You know what that sound means. Collab alert! With a beer brewed by Equilibrium Brewery out of New York and Keeping Together, which is a nano brewery out of Chicago. Sounds pretty funky and fresh. A beer that would no doubt make old McDonald's head spin and his corn cob pipe fall out of his face. Let's let John take it away before I start to sing.
EI, oh my God, it's a trip to the farm. So sorry.
Oh, so,
the Trip to the Farm badge, when you unlock this badge, if you haven't yet or haven't read the description, Untappd will imbibe you and remind you that you have a keen taste for this Belgian masterpiece. Did you know that the Saisons beer style was invented by Belgian farms? Brewed in the winter and served in the warmer spring and summer to those farm workers? Well, now you do. And the key to leveling up this badge is drinking more of those Saisons or Farmhouse ales or Grisettes as the badge has kind of evolved. In fact, the most recent expansion in this badge will now include Biere de Garde, which is, I think, French for a beer for keeping, and a Biere de Mars, which is French for a beer from Mars. Either of these new styles as well will help you level up this Trip to the Farm badge, which basically celebrates the Saison or Farmhouse ale. Right. And so that's how you earn it. That's how you level it up. Harrison, what are we drinking to level it up today?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we're doing a collab. This beer is called Keeping Memories. It's in a bottle. And it comes to us, it's brewed at Equilibrium Brewery in Middletown, New York. But collaboration between them and Keeping Together, which is a nano brewery. It's John showing off the label on YouTube from Chicago. No tap room. Looks like only kind of select places have it. And you got to know a guy to know a guy to get know when to pick up a bottle yourself. So pretty hype and limited on the Chicago side, but obviously Equilibrium is out and about. The style is the other Farmhouse ale. So obviously, as we've talked about in previous episodes, most notably towards the beginning of last season, if I remember correctly, about Saisons and Farmhouse ales. So it makes them different. They're pretty broad. They can become a lot of different things. So this one's categorized as kind of an other style Farmhouse ale, 6% ABV. It carries a 4.22 out of 5 rating on Untappd. So that's exciting. And from the brewery, it says, Keeping Memories pours a golden straw yellow with aromas of bright lemon zest, floral fields that aren't covered in 2 feet of snow, and a soft touch of oaky vanilla. After breaking through a creamy head, you'll find crisp flavors of soft lemon, complex stone fruit, lime grass, and vanilla oak, and a creamy mouthfeel and a dry finish. The beer is elegant, with a balanced acidity. So, yay, lots of memories of shows past, beers past. But I love the mixed culture beers, the beers that can get a little funky, and it feels like you're drinking something sophisticated, if you will. But I'm just guessing. John knows. He's already had his first sip, so I'll open up mine. We'll let John take us away. What's happening over there?
Dude, bravo, Equilibrium and keeping together. Just before we started recording, I was telling Harrison that I've really come around to Saisons. It was hard at first. They tasted like a farm to me, or the inside of a barn. Right. I thought they were horrible. And over time, like so many other things, you find one, you find two. Boulevard's Tank 7 helped introduce me to this style as a beer that I like. Anyway, this beer, it's a funk. Dude, there's funk in this. Intentionally, I would imagine. The two things that I'm left with are like sharp citrus peel in the flavor, surrounded just by like a James Brown concert. And then as soon as you finish, it's super dry and it's right back to it, and grab another. Like your whole palate is cleansed as soon as you swallow. This beer is great.
Yeah. And these beers are so much fun for a lot of reasons. I mean, so it's bottle conditioned. So right away, the mouthfeel is just different. It's just different than something that's been force carbonated. It feels like the bubbles are rounder. And softer.
No, I get it. Yep.
But there's also it's just a different kind of velvety mouthfeel that right away you kind of get a head up from something that's been forced carb. So that's really cool for me. And then also, again, they're going to open up. They're going to change. We're going to drink this throughout the show, and I'll hopefully remember to check in with John a couple of different times as we continue to drink it and see what it's tasting like in a few moments, because it's going to change and open up a bit. Great for aging, great to do verticals and save one for now and have one later. Like those bottle conditioned beers to a point they're fun to play with time and temperature and all that stuff. And they're great, period. I mean, this style, and again, this is kind of like a mixed culture. It's got American wild ale properties to it. It does have that funky acidity. I'll tell you what, and it's also oftentimes these beers they hit you in waves, the flavor, where it started out kind of, for me, very lemony, then that acidity kind of popped up and it dried out, and then I wasn't sure if I would taste it or not, but that vanilla oak shot right in at the end. It snuck in. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It ends on a dry finish, and I went to go and I was like, wait, there's more. It was a delayed. My brain couldn't quite accept that I was having some vanilla something, but indeed it gave way to my taste buds and let the truth be known. So, and I tasted it right away. So this is just very, very cool. But almost every time I have a beer like this, I think I wish I had 5 more of them. Wish I could save one and drink one every 3 months. Right away, I kind of enter into the what ifs, because I just know that if I had this beer 2 weeks from now or 3 months from now or next year, it'll be a different beer, and I maybe I have to go find some more of it just to have that experience again, because this is really cool in many, many ways. So I'm pumped we're enjoying it today.
Yeah. And that's definitely not every Saison or Farmhouse ale is one that you want to have a 2-year vertical of, but this one in particular, I would, because it's bottle conditioned, because there's some funk in this beer. If it wasn't labeled as a Saison, could be labeled as a sour, and you could call it a wild ale, and I wouldn't call you out on it. The oak, the flavors, there's so much complexity to this is not the beer you drink after you mow the lawn.
Right. No.
This is like a single malt scotch where you just kind of slow down for a little bit.
Yep, exactly. And it does, if you kind of dig deeper into this beer, they use fractional blending, so they're kind of adding a little bits of different beers, and then they're different. Some of them are aged, some of them aren't. They're planning on future batches of this with basically little bits of this beer in later beers, which is something a lot of breweries that do blending do. We did it at Neshaminy Creek. We had 3 fooders, like the big wooden tanks essentially, that all had 3 different base beers in them, and we would take stuff out of the barrel house and blend those beers with a lot of that base beer that we then were in turn always adding, like brewing fresh, again, table beer basically, or kettle sours, and then knocking them into those base beers, so that never got empty. We were always just kind of feeding it, and it was wild to be around these like living ancient wooden looking things all the time, and then to work with them like I did a bit was really cool too. We've talked about the barrel process and how it's much more romantic than it actually is. It's a unforgiving, kind of grueling day on the job when you're working with barrels, but
those are the days to call in.
Right. But then you bottle it and you sit on it until it's conditioned, you drink it, and it's just like something like this. It's kind of crazy and it's wild, and it's just so different than any other beer. I would say it's hard to like. Time is an ingredient here that you can't fake in beers like this. You can't somehow do this faster, which is really cool. And theirs is gonna right, exactly. But yeah, it sounds like it's a mixed culture. Different bugs in this. They aren't specific, but it probably has some lactobacillus or Brettanomyces or both in here. It has to. And love those bugs. They're delicious. And that's where we're getting that acidity from, and probably some of that lime and stone fruit too.
There's even larger breweries like Sam Adams. They do have some of those fooders. There's I think it's just a feeder beer called Kovic Motherfunk.
Right.
Which is one of the best names ever that they'll mix into some of their beers. To give them a little bit of purposeful funk.
Yeah.
That's also a cool band name, Purposeful Funk. But this is from Equilibrium I've heard of before. Keeping Together, as you alluded to, is incredibly small. Like you could live in Chicago and not go to Keeping Together for a few years. But Equilibrium has started to spread. They're widely celebrated, exceptionally talented. A couple of people. I think it's 2 guys that originally met at like a pizza bar out closer to New York or Philly.
Here we go.
When they first started dreaming up the idea of Equilibrium, but dope beers.
Yeah, I mean they're really well known for their double IPAs. So I was very much. You're always curious when a brewery that's again known for perhaps one thing, you get to enjoy something else from them, and really again and again, I've been happily surprised by. Whether it's, like the stouts that New Anthem make in town here, they're known for their IPAs, but their stouts are equally amazing. Like there's so many breweries out there that are just great breweries, and, they're students of this craft, and they obviously take it very seriously. But it's easy to go to a brewery like Equilibrium on the shelf and go, no, I'll just have their double IPAs. And I challenge you to stop and take a minute and see what else these guys are doing, and your favorite brewery's doing. Maybe try their lagers. Try their mixed stuff if they're doing it. Grab their porter. So many just great breweries right now. Don't count someone out or a beer out from somebody just because it's not what they are usually producing. And again, this is a cool. I mean, I was just curious about it. And actually, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but this came as a recommendation for John and I from Ross, who's one of the owners of the Whale. Out in Asheville. So got to meet him recently and talking about what we should have on the podcast. And we ran through a couple beers and he was like, this was one of the ones that came up and we talked a bit about it. And I was like, yeah, this sounds great. He sold me on it. So I had an advantage. I didn't need to go to the shelf and make a decision in a vacuum or see who checked in an Untappd that I knew. I could just talk to Ross about it and he guided us very well. So cheers to you, Ross. This is awesome, man. I'm loving it. Ooh.
And so while Harrison falls in love with this very funky Saison, I'll take a minute and we'll walk through some of the details about this badge.
Yep.
mainly recapping how it's earned. So you check into 5 different Saisons. There's a Farmhouse Ale, a Grisette, Biere de Mars, Biere de Garde, Sahti, which is basically like a Finnish Saison. Effectively, the Saison translates basically to season. The deal is like this: you're on a farm. Your help is very seasonal according to the products that your farm produces. You make these beers, and then when you're sowing and you're reaping, this is what you would drink. They're generally lower ABV, and it was like kind of like one of your fringe benefits for working at the farm would be to have their Saison. If you were at the Equilibrium farm, yours would be very funky. If you were at the Allagash farm, you'd be drinking Excellence. Either way, different varieties depending on where you are. And this badge has been unlocked about 725,000 times on Untappd. We just featured the I Believe in IPA, which is like 2.25 million. So a lot less in the Saison category. But some of the stars of the show for this badge are one of my favorite beers, Tank 7 from Boulevard. That's leading the charge for the beers that have unlocked this badge. And I think Tank 7 does a good job of being a Saison without bringing too much funk. It's very close to they do an IPA called The Calling, which that and Tank 7. I think there's even a little blending in there, but Tank 7's great. If you're unsure of Saisons and you can get your hand on Boulevard, look for Tank 7.
Yep.
Follow-ups go to Saison DuPont, which is the barometer for the style. And then you've got Goose Island Sophie. Brooklyn Brewery, they do some great bottle conditioned beers. They have one called Sriracha Ace, which is named after the Sriracha Ace hop. It's very like lemon balmy, lemon peely.
Yep.
And then other like Brewery Omegang, their Hennepin, Spotted
good.
Cow. Spotted Cow is like an icon in the Midwest. And you'll see then even like further down, Stone makes a Saison.
I know,
right?
I remember that,
Stone Brewing, Stone Saison. You don't think of Stone for Saison. So it's cool to see some of the beers that unlock this. And of course, many, many others. The Saison not as shelf wide as the IPA. But Harrison, have you drank any of those beers we were talking about? What's your level on how many times have you been to the farm?
That's right. Good question. So I've been a few. Right now I'm at level 6. However, I am only 1 check-in away from level 7. So this beer will do it. Put me to the next level of this badge, which is pretty cool. And actually, the last time I unlocked this badge, last time I leveled it up, was on the podcast. We did Informal number 1 from Fermentary Forum out of Philadelphia, which is a crazy, I remember like very kind of almost apple cider vinegary, intense mixed fermentation beer from those guys. I think that was last season. It might have been longer ago, but okay, cool.
Shout out to Corey for sharing that with us.
For getting that to
He's
us.
since
That's
got
awesome.
married. He's had a kid.
Corey's
doing
busy.
Great.
Right, he's doing great since I've last leveled up this badge. Lots happened in his life. Sounds like I need to be drinking more Saisons, but I mean, some good ones in there. Hennepin from Brewery Omegang was like one of my favorite beers for so long. I hadn't thought about it in a hot minute since you just mentioned it, so that'll have to jump back into my spring and summer drinking list. Take 7, obviously Saison DuPont. We did an episode with Allagash's Saison as well, kind of talking about new and old school Saisons, or rather 2 different interpretations of a classic Saison. That was a really fun episode to do. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy this. I'm surprised I'm not higher in this level, but I'm sure you're going to make me feel even worse about that in a moment, John. Where are you as a self-proclaimed new fan of Saisons? Where are you sitting on this badge?
I put my time in, man. I am at level 19 on this badge, which even still feels low. But like I said, there were many times where my wife loved Saisons early in our relationship. Some of me thought it was because it's a fancy sounding name. Some of it I thought because she just loved to torture me.
Yep.
Every time, oh, try this at the Saison. Tastes like a barn. It's horrible. But I would continue trying them.
That's right.
And probably the last 10 levels of this badge have been a joyful experience. The last one that leveled me up was actually Libra Divini from Lost Abbey, which is one of my best beers of the week a couple episodes ago.
Classic stuff.
Actually, speaking of which, it's been a little while since we've had a kind of a gauntlet throwdown badge challenge here on the podcast, Harrison.
That's right.
The last one was given to us by an Untappd user, and we failed horribly. But it did turn into the I'll Be Bach episode where we featured the Bach beer. If you're listening and you have a badge challenge you'd like to throw to Harrison and I, maybe he deserves a second shot for greatness. Should it be like the tripping on triple IPA badge, or maybe the Lager Jack because it's the year of the lager? Either way, if there's a badge throwdown you wanna send our way, go to Untappd or go to social media. What do you, Insta, Twitter?
Yep.
Facebook,
Rambook,
go to the post where you saw this thing on YouTube and just click on the comments. Let us know, hey, John Harrison should do a Lager Jack badge challenge. That'd be great. Let him know. We'll make sure we honor that. Probably when we get that challenge, we'll have to go to a venue to buy the beer for it, Harrison. And this is an awkward but somewhat copacetic transition into this episode's verified venue highlights of the week. What do you got for us, man?
That's it. So if you're watching on YouTube, you probably already know, although I also just mentioned it a minute ago. So hopefully if you're just listening in general, you know where I'm going to go, to the Whale. So if you don't know, the whale is, yes, a giant marine mammal, but also a really medium-sized bottle shop and bar in Asheville, North Carolina. So, and it should be on everybody's list. I mean, in my opinion, it's one of those, like, so well done destination beer bar experiences. Like, if you're on the level of Monks in Philly and Hop Leaf in Chicago and, like, all these famous places, it hasn't been around as long as those storied spots in arguably much larger and more established cities, but the owners, one of them is Ross, who I got to meet. They have a great background. I mean, they were working at the Funkatorium, Wikibeats Funkatorium, like back in the early days. They were kind of part of Asheville becoming this beer destination and kind of on the front lines of it, and now they have their own spot. And the reason I compare them to like behemoths like Monks and Hop Leaf is really their cellar list. I mean, you can go there and get some great stuff on tap, but the things that he has in humidors behind the bar and, you know, climate control, different devices all over the place, not messing around, and some serious, you could spend a lot of money on a lot of crazy beers from crazy places, and but then also have someone like Ross to talk to like take you on that journey where it's all just up in his head about this is brewed by so-and-so. This year they had a lot of rain, so chubby barley, and it made the beer this way. And you're like, whoa. So he's a wizard. And he looks like one too, kind of. So he has that going for him. But he was really nice and, again, guided us to while I was able to be up there and see him and visit the Whale and to grab this beer for this episode. And that was a home run. And also, again, why the Whale? So in their kind of story about, you know, why they named the place the Whale, obviously we all know whales are kind of a term for, you know, hard to get or sought after beers. And they also have a sculpture of a whale bone in the ceiling of the Whale. It's pretty cool. They have one in Greenville, South Carolina as well, which is very close to Asheville. Basically just like pretty much over the state line, pretty close by. So they're great though. I mean, these guys they're doing it right. They also have amazing t-shirts. I grabbed one, but like they'll take old album covers or other well-known brands and kind of throw their spin on it, which is fun too. And really, if you guys are out there, you know, like I am, building a list of where am I going after the pandemic, Asheville should be on it and the Whale should be on it. It's a destination to go beer while you're there. Right now, the parking lot's shut down. They have a bunch of tents outside, so you can grab some tacos from Zia Taqueria next door, sit there, drink crazy barrel-aged stuff outside, look at the cool whale skeleton, and have a pretty taste stuff you really can't find anywhere else. I mean, looking at their Untappd menu right now, they have the 10-year anniversary dry hop Farmhouse ale with oats and triticale, whatever that is, from Jester King. That's
Belgian candy sugar.
perfect. Oh, good, John. Excellent. I knew that. Noise and Flesh from Orpheus. They have stuff from Blackberry Farm, Prairie, Green Bench. It's like things you just don't see every day, or maybe breweries that you're familiar with, but the beers that like you see once a year. He seems to get his hands on them all the time. And for all of us being big Untappd fans, if you look through his Untappd menu, he has his whole cellar list on there. And it's all detailed. Right now, between the cellar list and the bottle list and the captain's choice, I mean, there are hundreds of beers you can run through and look at and kind of take your pick and have a crazy adventure. So recommend it. It's a really cool spot. Maybe one day we'll even do a podcast from there. Who knows what the future could hold up? An old Winnebago or something, as John and I dare to dream. Speaking of Winnebagos and road trips and post-pandemic stuff, John, do you have any kind of trips in mind? Anywhere you're itching to go when we can?
Man, if I could get my hands on a Winnebago or camper or anything, I would drive from city to city, filling it up with beer, and then go to whatever national park let me in, and just drink it there until it was gone.
That sounds like a date.
But there's a like going out to a public park, going out to an outdoor concert, going anywhere seems like a treat after the last year we've all kind of suffered through together. But one of the places, like the last year has kind of caused me to look, instead of like having these dreams of I want to go to Chicago and try and tackle all that in a weekend, I've started to look for smaller towns. There's you talk about Hopfly a lot. They're in like a tiny town. You could get an Airbnb on the cheap and kind of make a quick weekend of it. And one of the places that caught my eye was Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I've heard of the town. Lowe's Foods is kind of based out of there, but I've never really had a desire to go visit until I drank this beer called Death to Kettle Sours, which I'm not a fan of. I like Kettle Sours. They're cheap. They're easy to get. But Death to Kettle Sours from Incendiary Brewing, they did a peach version as well as many other fruits. They just started distributing out here to Wilmington. And this one it got me. Like maybe it was the right day. Maybe it was the right physical activity and then cracking open this. But it wasn't super sour. It wasn't bitter at all. It was just like this nice, refreshing peach that had a little more funk than you would get from a LaCroix. There was flavor in there, but it was really cool. And I looked at them on Untappd and saw they make a couple of different versions of this beer. And I would love to go spend a quick weekend out in Winston-Salem and visit Incendiary. I'm sure there's a couple of other breweries out there I'd like to go check out as well. So that's where I'd like to go. And that's my favorite beer of the week. I should have announced that when I kind of rolled into that. But that was my best beer of the week. That one, Death to Kettle Sours from Incendiary. What about you, Harrison? Any beers that you remember fondly? Absolutely, and I may join you in Winston-Salem. I've talked about Incendiary a couple times on this podcast this season, and Wiseman, which is also Wiseman Brewing based in Winston-Salem. So they've kind of caught my eye. Wake Forest University is there, so an excuse to watch a ACC football game and drink liters of Vienna Lager or pints of Kettle Sour or whatever, and kind of bumble around a cool little town that probably has cute shops and record stores and a cat cafe that I cannot go into because I'll sneeze until my nose falls off. But it's a cool idea. Things like that. That's what I'm imagining, like a town that Harry Potter would feel at home in with lots of magic. So maybe that's the case. We'll find out Sunday. We'll let you know. Until then, my best beer of the week is actually, I've decided to call it out because it's kind of become a go-to of mine. You may have seen me checking it a couple times at Untappd. I may have one
shortly after the show this evening, it's High Pitch Mosaic IPA from Highwire Brewing, which we've had one of their beers on earlier. We had their Low Pitch IPA on here earlier in the season. High Pitch is kind of it's their flagship IPA. It's great. Obviously features Mosaic hops, but it's kind of become, it's going to go to for me because it reminds me of drinking beer in like the early 2000s, kind of like what the freshest Dogfish Head 60 Minute, which was Centennial and Cascading. This one is Centennial and Mosaic, so similar, even hop profile, but just the malt profile was very similar, and it's just delicious. And we're lucky that we have a Highwire location in Wilmington now. The stuff we're getting from them is just crazy fresh. It always has been. I mean, it's still the same state. But again and again, I'll pick it up. And not for nothing, it comes in 6-pack, 16-ounce cans, and it's like $10 for 6 beers that are full pints. I mean, you really can't beat it as fresh as it is. So definitely earned a shout-out for me. Easily my best beer of the week. It's just one, every time I return to it, it does that thing where I open the can and I go, Mosaic, yes. And then I take my first sip and I'm like, yes, this is as good and even slightly better than I remembered. So that's fun when you find a beer like that you don't have to hunt to find, but every time you take a sip of it and you open a new one up, you're satisfied. So that's rare, not rare. It's all over the place now, but this one deserved a moment of my time.
$10 for 6 pints, though. I'm not going to miss the prices of drinking from home for the last year.
I know, right?
So when I go out more frequently and realize that $10 is just getting started.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, woof, never mind. Yeah, no, thanks. But yeah, that was
pros
fun.
And cons.
Yeah, pros and cons. Exactly right. That'll be a shock. But mentally prepare yourself for that now if you haven't gone out to eat in a while. Just get ready for that first out to eat bill landing at your table when that happens and going, we won't be doing this again for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's why we didn't do this every night. Oh boy.
I get it now. Yep. So I drank a Kettle Sour. Harrison drank a beer from the early 2000s. That's becoming a trend for us in our favorite beers, or like beers of nostalgic. Right. But where are you planning on going once you feel like it's safe to go out again, or if you've already started? Let us know in the comments where Untappd posts the release of this podcast. Are you planning on going to visit Incendiary Brewing in Winston-Salem, or a big city, a small city, going to a library and drinking a beer in the parking lot? We don't condone it, but it probably would be cool. Yeah, we've all been there. So make sure you're following us on one of those Twitter, Insta, YouTube socials. That way you can at least keep up with Harrison's band posters and t-shirts. But also, let us know where you're planning on going. We'd love to feature it, if possible, as a verified venue on one of our upcoming shows. And speaking of upcoming shows, Harrison, do we have anything planned for next week?
We'll see. There might be a poll in the Facebook group right now. Maybe it's closed. Maybe it never existed. We'll see. That's for the future. We'll figure that out then, maybe. Or maybe we already have by the time you're seeing this. Time is a flat circle. But we do know that American Craft Beer Week is coming up. We have some fun stuff planned. So keep an eye where you saw this post for this podcast there. Follow on with us. We'll let you know as soon as we do what's happening. I do know there's some special episodes, perhaps some special guests, maybe some badge things happening. Again, all that's to come, but you're in the right place to learn about it. So we'll keep you informed as we learn more. And until next time,
cheers!
Cheers!